Happy Friday, Baylor College of Medicine and friends of Baylor. I don't know about your holiday. Mine was, I was supposed to see family and kids, and they were all sick. My nephew's son was sick. My grandkids were sick. Everybody was sick. So I didn't see hardly. Everybody had either flu or COVID. So it was a typical holiday season. But I did get a wonderful holiday gift. Amaryllis flowers. Aren't they beautiful? That's from Debbie Sukin. Thank you, Debbie. Anyway, we're going to start off today back into the real data. There's a lot to discuss, not to mention the stuff that's coming out of the CDC. It's like a comedy show. I thought it was serious, but it's actually just a joke. Anyway, start off with TEPI data. What's going on in Texas? Adenovirus, parainfluenza, respiratory syncytial virus, flu, they're all up. Everything's up. The only thing that's coming down is norovirus and Mpox levels. And in Texas, influenza A is in abundance, mostly H3N2. So if you look at the CDC national data, flu clinical lab positivity is up 25%. It is the H3N2 that we've talked about that's not exactly the match for the vaccine. There's 6% increase in outpatient visits. They had 19,000 hospitalizations nationwide. Mortality is about 0.5% of hospital deaths have been attributed to flu. And so far, the CDC estimates 7,500,000 cases, 81,000 hospitalizations, and 3,100 deaths so far just from flu. So it's a pretty typical flu season. Remember, there are antiviral drugs. Tamiflu is available, so if you're at high risk, even if you've been vaccinated, if you get the flu, you can always take Tamiflu. And it's gotten to the point now that a lot of hospitals are closing, restricting visitors. So Duke University Health System, Mission Health, Western North Carolina, Novant, UNC, they've all stopped having visitors. Cookeville Hospital in Tennessee, the Jackson Memorial System in Illinois, and Banner Health, all 6 states, and the University of Tennessee Medical Center are all closing because of the number of flu cases. They don't want people coming in to have and bringing flu into the hospital. Now, what's interesting is, usually the southern hemisphere has their flu season when it's our summer and it's their winter, and it flips. Well, in Australia, they are having an extended flu season. So it's actually to the point where flu season should stop, but Australia is still having a lot of cases, and they're attributing it mostly to this late emergence of the H3N2, that K clade that is slightly different. There's a little genetic drift, so it's not exactly matched to the vaccine. So if you look at the data, 95% of the influenza nationwide is influenza A, a little bit of B, not too much. And if you look at what type, if you do the genotyping, it's almost all H3N2 with only 8% being H1N1. Just the opposite of last year. Last year it was all H1N1 until it became the late sort of emergence of H3N2. Now, again, if you look at this season compared to last season, we are in the peak just exactly the same as the 24-25 season. What happened last year, and we still don't know, is there was a second peak that happened sort of in February. You saw that. That's not typical. Usually there's one peak and it comes down. Last year there were 2 peaks. This is for outpatient visits, and if you look at hospitalizations, the blue line, that is the same thing. So hospitalizations had this double peak, and we just have to see. The mortality is about the same as it has been in previous years. If we look at this as during the COVID season, it doesn't really count, but 23, 24, 24, 25 mortality, we're here right now, so it doesn't seem to be any worse. It's just widespread right now. And I like this. I got this from Medical University of South Carolina. It shows that in the red line you see COVID, and in the blue line you see flu. And what's interesting is they're not the same. So, influenza season really is November, December, January. You can see that peak right then. And with COVID, it's been late summer, like in August we had the COVID peak, and then late winter. So you have these 2 peaks. And if that keeps up, then we should probably see the emergence of more and more COVID late in winter as flu season begins to decline. And consistent with that, if you look at the wastewater for COVID, it's beginning to trend upward. So, it looks like we're going to have that second peak. We had it in August. I know we had actually several people in our office had COVID. So, it's around. Some of the early indicators for COVID, it's beginning to increase, a 3.9% increase in test positivity and about a 1% increase in ED visits. So let's focus a little bit on what's going on with COVID, because it is going to start becoming more and more relevant. You're going to have more and more people getting sick late in winter from COVID. This was in June, and in June we were talking about the LP81 with very little XFG, and I'm going to show you the way these emerged genetically in just a second. So that was in June, 43% LP81 with very little XFG, only 10 or 14%. XFG is now the dominant strain, 85%. And it's really, it's complicated, but viral genetics is fascinating because it really shows you how hard it is sort of to predict what's going to happen. So if you look at, in 2024, we had this JN1 variety, and it became what was known as Nimbus, the NB 1.81. In 2024, it was these K variants, the flirt variants. And in 2025, this past year, it has been these sort of variants of the K variety. And when the people who are making the vaccine for COVID, they picked LP81 because it was the most dominant in the summer. But what's actually happened is it's actually a XFG. So you think it's evolving in this direction, and what happened is it evolves in this direction. Now, they're close enough related that the COVID vaccine will be just fine. And this is what's happening worldwide. Also, remember, we have the traveler-based genomic surveillance at most of the major international airports. And what you can see is internationally, there's not a lot of COVID around, but it is going to start emerging. But the dominant strain, like in the U.S., is XFG, 91%. So anyway, it's interesting because we're in the middle of the flu. It's a good, pretty predictable flu season. It's going to start to fall. And then what we're going to see is a late winter emergence of COVID. So you have to be prepared for both of them. Hopefully you've been vaccinated against both. It's still interesting. There was a study from Korea that looked at what is the relative virulence. Like, is it still a more deadly virus? When COVID first emerged in 2020, COVID-19 in late 19 and 20, very high mortality. And as we got vaccinated and exposed to the virus and the virus evolved, it's become less and less virulent. In other words, the mortality is not as high. But it's still about 10-fold higher mortality than flu. And flu is already bad enough. But this is a study from a large number of patients, from 15 million patients in Korea, and they just looked at what's the mortality from 22 to 23 flu versus COVID. And what they found was there was a 76% higher chance of dying with COVID than with the flu, and it was a 12-fold increase in mortality. So anyway, COVID remains a real problem. It's going to emerge. It's not around right now. Flu is the main problem right now, but be prepared because it's going to come back. So knowing all these important viruses, and our best strategy to protect ourselves is, of course, to get vaccinated. So what are the brilliant vaccine policies coming out of Washington, D.C.? So it's actually been said that the United States is expected to adopt more of an approach like Denmark. Now, I have no idea who's thinking that, but Denmark is a very small country with universal health. So that means everybody in Denmark gets screened for all these diseases. So, in our country, not so much. So if we had universal health care, maybe that would be a reasonable approach, but it's not. Now, how many people are in Denmark? 6 million. We have more people in Houston than in Denmark, and we have 28 million uninsured people. We're never going to get screened for anything. It doesn't make any sense for us to try and be like Denmark. Besides wanting to take over Greenland, we're going to also do everything we can do to be like Denmark. Anyway, makes no sense. So trying to be more like Denmark instead of countries that are like us, like Canada, France, other European countries that are like us, that have a very similar vaccine schedule, we're going to go with Denmark. Go from 17 to 11 shots. And the 11 shots that we're going to get rid of are all ones that are really pretty significant. So the updated schedule that just came out, so the ones that they've decided to stop recommending, or just for high-risk patients, are meningitis. I've taken care of patients, young patients with meningitis who lose their arms and legs. That is a terrible idea to stop recommending meningitis. And by the way, the American Academy of Pediatrics continues to recommend vaccines for meningitis. Hepatitis A and B, we've talked about that a couple of times. That's no longer recommended, except the American Academy of Pediatrics and me recommend getting it because we don't screen all the patients, and hepatitis in a young infant is a real problem. We don't screen all the mothers. RSV, we just had all this great data that pregnant women should be vaccinated because then the antibodies to RSV are transmitted to the baby during pregnancy and through breast milk. The American Academy of Pediatrics continues to recommend that pregnant mothers get vaccinated, and for women who are not vaccinated, for infants under the age of 8 months who are having their first exposure to RSV, they're recommending the monoclonal antibody. So, I would follow the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics. They know the most about how to take care of kids. And it's unfortunate the CDC is no longer using evidence-based suggestions, but it is what it is. U.S. cases of measles continue to go up. It's over 2,000 now. Again, a completely preventable disease. There are 223 people in quarantine and 3 in isolation in South Carolina. North Carolina now has ongoing cases. Utah measles cases are up to 156. And my favorite, I didn't even know there was a Noah's Ark, for real, but in Kentucky, there is a replica of Noah's Ark, and people go all over the country to see this Noah's Ark, and apparently 1,000 people went to see Noah's Ark on a day when a child with measles was had it. So Noah's Ark is not only bringing pairs of animals, but also bringing the measles along with it. Anyway, it's hard for me to sometimes just get through a session like this with stuff that's coming out of CDC. Anyway, I'm going to end today with a bunch of shout-outs. Congratulations to Dr. Ricardo Nuila, Associate Professor of Medicine, who was named the recipient of the John P. McGovern Award Lectureship for the Southwest Chapter of the American Medical Writers Association. This award was established in 1982 to recognize excellence in medical writing. He wrote a great book called The People's Hospital, Stories and Lessons from a Safety Net Healthcare System that describes his own personal journey through Ben Taub Hospital. He's on our medical staff, very proud of him. Also, it is Marathon Week here in Houston. Good luck to everyone in the Baylor community who's participating in the Chevron Houston Marathon, the Ramco Houston Half Marathon, and the wheelchair competition or the 5K on Sunday. It's a great event for our city. I've never run the Houston Marathon. I've run 3 New York marathons, but I probably should run one. What do you think, Billy? Should I run? I should probably do one. I should go for it. Finally, I want to do a big shout out to Grace Wang and Stephen Pabelin, longtime viewers of our little podcast here, who recently celebrated their 48th wedding anniversary. Lily and I hope you have a wonderful celebration and wish you many more years of adventures and, of course, watching our show. And finally, Monday will be the Houston, Texas Spirit Day for Baylor to celebrate the Texans making it to the playoffs. We'll be taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers and another vaccine denier, their quarterback, Rodgers. Anyway, we better beat the Steelers. That's all I got to say. Go Texans, beat the Steelers, and I can't wait to see you.